Welcome, everybody, to the Unquestionably Raw podcast. Tonight officially is our first mailbag episode. So it's our way of answering all of your questions that you sent to us, and we have a lot of them to get to. But first, I want to re-announce our partnership with the 16 Wins a Ring Network. We're one of a couple podcasts that are going to be on the network, and 16 Wins a Ring is officially launching tomorrow, which is Thursday, December 22nd at noon Eastern. So that's 12 p.m. Eastern time. So in the meantime, please go to Twitter. You can check out 16 Wins a Ring or at 16 Wins a Ring. And you can follow all the quality writers such as Keith himself and many others on there, as well as just looking at all the upcoming content they have. So, fellas, let's get started and jump right into the questions. So, our first one is from our good buddy Orlando Till. He says, or is asking, who is having the better season so far out of Jimmy Butler, Gordon Hayward, and Paul George? Keith, you go first.
Oh, that's a tough one right out of the gate. I'll go with Jimmy Butler. I think all three of them are having great seasons, but what's going to give me the little bit of the difference is Gordon and George have both missed some time with injuries. So I'll go with Butler, who's been mostly healthy throughout the entire first part of the season here. So I'll go with Butler, but it's close. All three of those guys are playing pretty well. I'd actually surprisingly probably have Paul George last on that list. I think he has struggled with his consistency. I don't know how much of that was due to the injury, but he hasn't been as consistent as he normally is.
Nice. Matt, who do you choose?
I agree with Keith. I'm going with Jimmy. I think he's been better defensively than the other two. Obviously, the scoring numbers are a little better as well. You throw in the defense, and I think that definitely gets Jimmy the advantage there. But let's not, slight any of the other guys. Like Keith said, with Paul George's injury, slightly inconsistent. But Gordon Hayward is having a career year. He's really become a go-to. He's become an elite player in the NBA now. So I don't want to slight him at all because he's been fantastic. But I got to give the edge to Jimmy on this one.
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys, Jimmy, just because of the amount of games that Hayward and George have missed. Hayward is nipping on his heels, though. That Utah Jazz team they're going to climb up the rankings for sure. I could see them possibly leapfrogging the Clippers, especially with the Blake injury, and Gordon is a huge part of that, along with Rudy Gobert. So
absolutely, and they don't have to play Golden State every night.
Exactly. So definitely Jimmy. Let's keep with Orlando because he had a second question. So he's asking which team has the best bench in the league? Matt.
Best bench. I've got, obviously, I think the Lakers have one of the better benches. You bring Clarkson off the bench. You bring Lou Williams. You're going to get a lot of offense. And we talked about it earlier. You aren't as high on them, but I actually like the Houston Rockets bench. Obviously, you get the scoring from Eric Gordon. You got Sam Decker, who's becoming a fantastic all-around player for them off the bench. You throw in Harrell, who's a good energy guy. I really like the Rockets bench. Those two stand out to me. And Denver's they've got a pretty good bench as well. I think the problem with Denver, though, is they just have so many quality NBA guys. It's hard to get them a lot of minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Keith, who do you think has the best bench?
Yeah, it's hard to pick against the Lakers at this point. They've been so good. There's games where the bench has outscored the starting five, so they've been good. I'm with Matt on the Rockets. Rockets have been really good. Most of that's Eric Gordon, but you've got some stuff. You can never count out the Spurs. They are always solid off the bench. And then I will go with to throw one more team in the mix. I'm going to throw two more in the mix. Sorry, I like the Raptors bench. Has been really solid with Patterson, Joseph, Ross kind of playing out of his mind, and then Bebe Nogueira has played really solid for them off the bench, and that's with pieces missing as far as DeLon Wright and Jared Sullinger. But the last one I want to throw in that I think is a little sneaky is the Orlando Magic. especially since they moved Nikola Vucevic and Alfred Payton to the bench. They've been really good.
Absolutely. And Utah, we forgot to mention Utah. They've had injuries, so some of those bench guys have had to start some games this year.
Yeah, same with Memphis, too. I think Memphis is in that same boat.
Yeah, I was going to go. Memphis actually was on my list because Matt threw out Denver, which was another one of mine. Just with Denver, it's almost too much depth on that team once they get everybody healthy. So, but the Lakers for me, obviously the scariest bench. Lou Williams can go off on a nightly basis. Jordan Clarkson. You got Larry Nance as the energy guy. So, good pieces there. Going to the next question. Speaking of the Toronto Raptors, Ninja Bro on Real GM is asking, will the Toronto Raptors be able to sustain and break the NBA record for offensive efficiency? Keith, I'm going to go to you first.
Yeah, at the expense of angering Raptor Nation, I'm going to say no. It's going to be really close, though. They are very, very good. It's just they've got some guys who are playing almost at historical levels. DeMar DeRozan has had such a hot start to the season. There's no way it can keep up at quite this level. Kyle Lowry's been pretty good, but I think both of those guys will slip back. I also think as the season gets a little deeper, they might not have as much to play for down the stretch. I think they're very firmly going to be the second team in the East. Maybe they can catch Cleveland for first in the regular season, and that might make a difference if they want to push for home court. But I think that's where it'll slide off, and I actually think they'll probably end up finishing behind Golden State when all is said and done.
I have to definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and we've seen it just in the last couple of weeks with DeRozan. He's starting to come back down to earth a little bit. Now, when I say come down to earth, still very good basketball player, just not historical numbers like he was just on that huge tear. He's come back down more so toward his normal levels. Terrence Ross has been kind of a streaky guy his whole career. We all saw him put up the 50-plus points against the Clippers a few years ago, but he is who he is, Maybe he does keep it up, maybe he doesn't. I don't think he will just because history tells us he won't. So I don't think they will be able to maintain this crazy pace.
No, as much as I wanted to say yes to that question, I couldn't find myself doing so. For every kind of pro that I had that they could do it, there's I just look at past performances of DeRozan. He's a mid-range shooter. He's going to struggle if teams kind of take that away some games. No outside shot. He's going to kind of have to force his way to the rim. And then Kyle Lowry has some games where he just does not shoot the greatest. And then you're kind of missing guys here and there with injuries. So I think the Warriors obviously are gonna take that offensive.
And the crazy thing with this Raptors team, it doesn't really matter what they do in the regular season because they haven't been very good. Like especially Lowry and DeRozan have been stinkers come playoff time.
Yeah, they're gonna have to prove it.
That's what really counts. Yeah.
All right, guys, we got to put on our kind of GM hats, I guess, for this question. The underscore hater on realgm.com wants to know who are the three most likely players that could possibly be traded before New Year's.
Man,
I'm going to actually say that I don't think that three guys even get moved before New Year's. That's going to be my first part of it, but I'll finish up last. Matt, I'm going to go to you on this one.
Oh God, if I had to choose three, I mean, the obvious one, Nerlens Noel. We all know he basically wants out, so he would be one. I don't really know. I would say Rudy Gay maybe, two, and one. All credit to Keith on this one because he's mentioned Andrew Bogut. Someone like Portland could go after him.
Okay, Keith, who do you think? Well, let me ask you this: do you think three guys get moved? And if so, give me three guys. If not, just give me who you think might get moved.
Yeah, before the first of the year, I don't think anyone's going anywhere. Teams don't. It has to be a really good move for that to happen. Teams are also, they're not completely automatons here. They don't want to ruin guys' lives over the holidays. They want to give people a chance to settle as much as they can. The NBA is already an unsettled life, so they don't tend to like to do that very much to players. So I don't think anyone will get moved before the first of the year. But I think shortly thereafter, we're going to see some moves. Matt hit a bunch of the definite names I would hit on too. I would also add in, keep an eye on the Brooklyn Nets. I think they're going to get ready to start selling off some pieces here and start recouping some assets. They have no chance of making the playoffs. They're going to swap that pick with Boston. And Sean Marks has the exact right attitude about it as far as being it's a sunk cost. There's nothing he can do about it. He can't reverse it. So make the best of a bad situation, recoup what assets you can, and move forward. And I think you're going to see guys like Bojan Bogdanovic, potentially Brook Lopez, maybe Trevor Booker. Those are the types of guys that I think you're going to see on the market for the Nets, and it's going to probably come here within the next month at the latest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for the Nets, Randy Foy would be a guy I would definitely see getting moved somewhere as well. I just, as much as a Sixers fan, I want a resolution to the three-center monster, three-headed, whatever you want to say. I just don't see it happening. And actually, it's funny with the comments that Embiid threw out that his best friend on the team is Noel, and he'd like to see them play together. I'd actually like to see that first before they do anything, even if it is just to boost up Noel's, trade value a little more, just to see what happens. But no, I do not think anybody gets moved before New Year's, but just as Keith said, maybe just a little bit after, 2-3 weeks after. Let's see. There's a Facebook group called Sports Overtime. Our buddy Lance, that's on the podcast quite a bit, and he actually is a member of that group and threw out the podcast for us, and we got a bunch of hits back. So most of these questions are coming out of there, but Mike Barhams is wanting to know, will Russell Westbrook win the MVP if his team is lower than a 5th seed? Keith, I'm going to go to you first.
Going to depend on where James Harden lands and guys like LeBron and how they finish up the season. If it ends up that they're the 5th seed and let's say the Rockets are the 3 seed, which with Blake Griffin being out, I don't think is a real stretch. May not even have been a stretch before then. And Harden's close to a triple-double numbers himself. I think Harden gets the nod. But if those guys' numbers don't maintain or blow people away, as long as OKC makes the playoffs, if he puts up a triple-double, then Westbrook's probably going to get the MVP.
Okay. Matt, what's your thoughts?
Usually I would say no. If he finishes lower than a 4 seed, I'd say he has no chance. But this is one of those years. We see how the media is. They pick each year. There seems to be a new hype, guys. Last couple years it was Stephen Curry. The media is all over these guys. They're the darling, and Russell Westbrook is that guy this year. Every time you turn on NBA TV, ESPN, hell, even you watch the Bulls game, you hear Stacey King. He's all over Russell Westbrook. The media loves the guy this year, so I wouldn't be shocked if he got it. If they win 50 games and finish 6th in the West, he could get it. Shoot, if they win 47 games, he may get it. If he averages a triple-double, that may, they may overlook the wins and say, you know what, we're going to give it to this guy because it just seems like, and you listen to NBA radio and stuff, they love the guy. You don't really hear a negative thing about him. They don't talk about any of the flaws or anything like that. They marvel over him. And he's been fantastic. I don't want to take that away from him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with exactly what you said, Keith. It all depends on James Harden. James Harden's my number one, and that's just for my personal, preference. Nothing to take away from what Russell Westbrook's done. I just prefer what James Harden does for his team a little bit more to kind of push him up in that MVP conversation. But absolutely, I think it's going to be neck and neck as far as Harden and Westbrook. You can throw LeBron in that conversation. You can throw a couple other guys in there as well. So until we get a little bit more into the season, kind of see where the records fall, a little bit hard to truly answer that one. But Matt, I'm going to go to you. Troy Hoskins is asking, should the Sixers trade their first-round draft pick for a veteran?
Absolutely not. This draft is loaded. No way. I mean, we saw the other day Kentucky plays. What did Malik Monk goes nuts, right? but then De'Aaron Fox in that same game goes like 23-10, 24-10, and no one's talking about it. That's how loaded this draft is going to be. Do not trade that pick. Keep doing what you're doing. Trust the process.
I'm glad you threw out De'Aaron Fox, because Fox is actually who I wish the Sixers would take.
He can play.
Because he's more of a scorer. He would fit perfect in that offense, because you got Simmons kind of running the running the point guard spot next year. So that would be perfect. But Keith,
he's a Houston guy, so we got to throw that out there.
Exactly. What do you think, Keith?
Today, I'm with Matt. Absolutely not a chance. No reason to do that. They're not going to make the playoffs. That's the only reason you go in now on that type of move. If we get to the draft and someone's willing to give up, I'm not reporting this. I'm not saying it's realistic. But if, let's say, the Pacers said, hey, we'll give you Paul George for the pick and some other pieces, well, then maybe you think about it. Right, but if it's in this season, absolutely not. I'm probably at the draft. You're probably just going with whoever the best point guard, shooting guard combo guy is, and just moving forward from there.
Exactly. Let's hope Colangelo is not stupid enough to pick another big man. Not that there are many great ones in this draft, but if a big gets picked, I might have to renounce being a Sixers fan for sure. But going to the next question. And Keith, I'm going to start with you. Mike Jones wants to know what's a move that the Pelicans can make to help Anthony Davis for this season and help the Pelicans push themselves into the playoffs?
Build a time machine and go back and not make a bunch of the other moves they already made.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know. I actually really liked what they did this summer, because I think they got quality NBA players who are going to be available, which, each one more has been available all year. Langston Galloway, Solomon Hill, those guys are good players. They might have paid a little bit too much for a couple of them, but that's not the end of the world. I think the biggest challenge for them is they need to don't do anything rash the rest of this season. If you can right the ship, which it seems like they maybe have a little bit, and push for the playoffs, that's fine with what you have, but don't go in too deep. Just try to roll with what you've got, make it happen around that, and then hit the offseason and figure some things out. Is Drew Holiday your guy going forward? Are you going to commit to him as your long-term point guard? Or do you want to just move on from that? Maybe you run Galloway or more, or even Tim Frazier's looked excellent this year. Run him out there, and see what it looks like from there. But I don't want to see him do too crazy of a move. But there's the sense that Anthony Davis' frustration level is starting to boil a little, and you don't want to get too deep into this before Anthony Davis looks and says, I'm 6-7 years into my career, and I'd eventually like to contend for a title, and starts asking for a move, because then we all know how those go. Superstar trades don't deliver the value that they should.
Nope.
Exactly. Matt, what do you think?
I'm on board with Keith. What Keith said, don't do anything stupid, don't do anything irrational. But I also want to add in plus the guys he mentioned, Frazier and those guys, and Galloway. They've been pretty good. They're not very far out of that eighth seed. Anything's possible right now. But also I will add, let's develop Buddy Hield, because he's looked much better in the starting lineup. Shooting the ball, I think, damn near over 50% now since entering the starting lineup. Was 2 for 2 from 3 last night. A little shaky with his off-the-dribble game, although he can get to the basket in a couple dribbles, just catch 2 dribbles to the bucket. But when he has to create medium-range pull-ups and floaters, he struggles a little bit. But I think continue to develop him, keep him in that starting lineup, because I think he's going to really help spread the floor for them.
Yeah, it's worked well, kind of putting him in there for his shooting. So
and watching yesterday, you saw the game. They did not leave Buddy Hield. They were on him the whole day, which helps create more space for Anthony Davis. McConnell, when he was in the game, he was glue. He was face guarding him the whole time.
And that's the thing there, where Buddy Hield's going to have to get better, though.
Exactly.
He's going to have to be able to take guys off the dribble, get to the rim, because as we know with a guy like Nick Stauskas, for example. He was just trying to fire away, never really wanted to put the ball on the floor that much. And he's done so, more recently, and has had success trying to get to the rim and finish. So hopefully Hield can figure it out. And he's a rookie. It's 20-some games in.
And his career in college tells you he's going to improve because that guy nobody knew who he was as a freshman, really, or even a sophomore. He got so much better each year. So that tells me this guy can develop and he's capable.
But as far as going back to answer the question, what do they need to do? Just a small move, maybe, moving a guy like Ashik, getting something small back, not a major deal or anything. They're going to have to figure out Tyreek Evans, what they have there moving forward, but they don't have to do it right this second. But by the offseason, they're going to have to either, dump him loose or, utilize him once he's, fully healthy. Let's see. We've got Keith. I'm actually going to go to you for this one because it's a Celtics question. Ricky Holbert wants to know, will the Celtics finally make that major move that everybody's anticipated? Will they make that move this year, do you think?
I think they're going to try, and it won't be for a lack of trying, that's for sure. Danny Ainge is active as any other GM out there. He's constantly working the phones trying to make that move. He really wants to add that star piece to the crew that he already has. The challenge is, what are they willing to give up? If they're not willing to move off either this year's Nets swap or next year's Nets pick going outright, then they're going to struggle. There's just not much that they can probably do. So it'll depend on what they're willing to give up and the move they're willing to make. If they're willing to pay, there's guys out there that they can probably go get that would make a difference.
Okay. Do you agree with that, Matt?
Absolutely. And, we've all Danny Ainge has been trying to make a move the last 3 years to bring in a superstar. So we know he's trying to make one. It's just they haven't had anybody bite yet.
Yeah, the thing about it is, obviously heard about DeMarcus Cousins thrown out many times. I just can't put Cousins on that Celtics team just because I think it's going to be a disaster for chemistry. That guy, you saw where they cut his mic in the post-game, thing because he started spouting off about Plumlee and just
I saw that.
Not sure kind of where it was going to go from there. I could only imagine it was going to get worse.
But remember, Pete, winning cures things, though. Winning can solve a lot of these problems.
I don't know that you can solve.
In Cousins' defense, he's played his entire career for the worst franchise in sports.
Exactly.
So maybe going to a great franchise like Boston, winning culture, great coach in Brad Stevens, maybe that'll make a difference.
Exactly. And that actually was going into the next question, but I think we kind of just touched on the question was same for Ricky Holbert about moving. Would DeMarcus Cousins actually move this year? Keith, do you think that he actually does get moved, or do you think the drama wages on?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Every time I'm ready to say, nope, they're going to keep him and they're going to build around him, he goes and does something dumber than the dumb thing he did before. So that whole business of going after that reporter was completely uncalled for and unnecessary. I realize that's a contentious relationship, but he could have far better handled it. And unfortunately, when he issued his apology statement after the fact, he apologized to everybody but the reporter that he went after. So that's, rang a little hollow to me. That was more of a, we got to do this. I'll do that. So, so I will say, it's so hard to know. And I think the Kings they're desperate to win. And I think they see him as their clearest path to winning. So I don't think they're ready to make that move yet either. But I think it just feels like if there's one more thing, it's going to be time, and they're just going to say, no, we got to move on and work on this situation. So I realize I'm firmly riding the fence on this one. And, it's mostly because I don't know. I can't get a good handle on this situation at all.
Matt, what do you think as far as Cousins moving?
Everybody knows how I feel about the Sacramento Kings front office. I don't think he gets moved because I don't think Ranadive wants to trade him. And Ranadive, I think, has the final say-so, and he's not moving him. I don't think he's going to. He's an idiot. He's an idiot. The guy's an idiot, and he's not going to. I don't think he's going to move him. He's hell-bent on moving DeMarcus Cousins. He thinks they can win with him.
It's going to be hard to say that they're going to get equal value because they're not going to
hell no.
Get what they potentially would want back for him. I'm going to say he doesn't get moved this year. Just kind of throw it out there. I think that the better option is they move a guy like Rudy Gay. They move Costa Koufis, and maybe one other guy, hopefully Omri Caspi, so we can get out of that.
Flalo.
Well, yeah, Flalo out there, but based on this kind of, he said the reports were false, that he didn't want to go into a game. How true that is, I don't know, but, it's just toxic all around there, and it's kind of sad because with the new arena, you have plenty of fans that you can get in the Sacramento area that would, buy into a team that's fun and energetic, and just, all the life is kind of sucked out of that Sacramento team right now. So, Matt, I'm going to go to you. Trevor Coleman wants to know, will the Clippers actually try to move Blake Griffin since he got hurt again, and potentially knowing that they may have to, kind of reconfigure the team in the offseason?
No, I don't think they're going to move him. I read the other day that the team doesn't really want to break this thing up, even if they don't win a championship this year. They kind of want to keep this thing together, and I don't think they're going to fall too far out of it. We saw last year, J.J. Redick was fantastic again last night, so I think they're going to be able to possibly hold on to that 3-4 seed. I don't think they're going to drop too far, as long as Chris Paul stays healthy. But if just Blake Griffin out, they're going to be fine. But no, I don't think they're going to move him.
Okay. Keith, do you think the Clippers move Blake?
Yeah, they would have to play completely above their heads and win at a really high rate while he's out for this, what did they say, 3 to 6 weeks, I think I read.
Yeah.
So if it's that long of a period, I think it'll be they would have to win, almost not every game, but at a very high level for them to say, we're fine without him. They're not going to break it up this year. I do think it maybe makes it slightly more possible that they move on from him in the offseason because he is going to opt out. He's going to be a free agent. And
right.
I could question, is this the guy we want to dump a ton of money into, especially with all the new rules on signing your own free agents and raises and all that with the new CBA, which he will be working under.
That's my thought. It'd be the offseason if they can get some kind of package deal a little bit better because they know they're going to lose him. Maybe try to do like a sign and trade or something like that. Kind of get some pieces back, but I don't know how realistic that is. But I don't think they move him right now. Too much at stake as far as the Clippers' playoff chances for them to move on, and you're not going to get tons back for him. That's going to be a big difference maker right now. Let's see. Let's go to are retired players the best route for head coaching options nowadays? Ami Coat, I think is how you say it. I'm not sure. Hopefully I didn't butcher that too bad. But he's asking that. Keith, I'm going to go to you.
Yeah, first I'll say if you want us to pronounce your name right, you need to tell us how to say it because otherwise we're probably going to butcher them. So all apologies. That's the one blanket apology everybody gets, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not against retired players. I don't know that's the best route. I think if you find a good, talented coach anywhere, some of the best coaches are not retired players. Brad Stevens, Craig Popovich, those guys didn't play in the NBA. So I think you can definitely find good former NBA players. If it's the right guy, it's the right guy. So I wouldn't marry myself to any one strategy. Just go get the best guy and make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, what's your thoughts?
I think it's just kind of the thing to do now. You saw what happened in Golden State. Hornacek had some success in Phoenix. I think it's just the in thing to do, right? It's a copycat league. So everybody, Luke Walton now. So it's just what everybody's going to do.
I would take a retired player over the recycling of some coaches. Yeah. Please don't recycle Larry Brown. Please don't recycle George Karl. We don't need a recycled Mo Cheeks on the sidelines as a head coach. Like
Jeff Van Gundy.
I would actually take Jeff Van Gundy as a coach one more time. I could live with that. Some of those guys, it's just like, stop giving these guys jobs. Like, what is going on here?
Well, actually, where it really first started was Mark Jackson. Kind of was one of the first. He really got that Golden State Warriors, winning again, changed the culture there, and then it seemed like now that happened. Well, let's just hire all these retired coaches. Boom.
Yeah, for this wave, I mean, it's been going on for 50 years that way. But this wave, and he's a perfect example where I think he's just good enough to make you a good team, but I don't know that he can bring you over the top. But then, maybe the next guy who comes along, maybe that guy will be the guy who can push you over. I think you gotta. The one thing I think I do want to see is, unless the guy's an absolute train wreck, roll with the guy for at least a handful of seasons, especially if you're a bad team. If he comes in and he's a complete disaster, you want to move on.
Derek Fisher.
Yeah, but like the Lakers, right? They're not going to be good this year. And let's say they hastily said, we got to move on from Luke Walton. We got to go, the retired, or the second chance retread coach route. That wouldn't be the right thing to do. Give the guy a chance. Let him see what he can do and really work through it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's see. Matt, I'm going to you. What was the reason for the Wizards' bad start, and what has changed? That's coming from Hub Roberts.
Well, the few, I've watched the Wizards 3, 4, 5 times this year, a little bit at the beginning, a little bit here recently. They seem kind of lifeless at the beginning of the season. Yeah, you had the whole thing going on with Beal and John Wall and all that stuff, but they seemed like they were just going through the motions. But one thing I've looked at with this recent surge, they're 9-6 in their last, 15 games, 60%, but only one of those wins has come against a team over 500. So I think you got to look at it. They're playing better. Bradley Beal's been fantastic, probably having the best stretch, 10, 11 game stretch of his career. So that's also part of it. He's been great. But I think, we want to pump the brakes a little bit with the Wizards. They're beating bad teams.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I went and looked at their schedule, because I haven't watched every Wizards game this year, but I went and looked at the schedule and I saw the teams they were beating. And I think of those 9 wins, 8 of them were against teams below 500.
Yeah. Keith, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Matt hit it. I think they started out and it was like, oh man, break this team up today. And
they were a train wreck.
Start selling guys off and get rid of all of them. Move the franchise, end it, and they just, and it was exactly what Matt said. Lifeless, looked like they didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
And it was everyone. It wasn't one guy. It was the entire roster. And then you had Gortat calling out the bench, and it was all just really, really ugly. And then all of a sudden it clicked. And sometimes, I always say this in the NBA, right? Everybody plays roughly an equal schedule. They don't make the schedule. You play whoever the league gives you. So your job is to go out and win the games you're supposed to win. And sometimes you need that stretch where you get a bunch of bad teams and you can win some games to build your confidence. So hopefully they're coming back around. The good thing for them is no one has separated themselves really from 3 to 10, 11, 12 in the East.
I think 3 games separate 3 from 11.
Yeah, it was. I know. Yeah, it was like 3.5 or 4 games a couple of days ago from 3 through 12. So you've got Cavs and Toronto at top, and then you've got the few teams at the very bottom, and then everybody else is right in that mix. So good for Washington to weather the storm, and they can still turn this around. They've got enough talent, but at the expense of I don't like the way he did it, but Marcin Gortat was right. That bench is an absolute disaster.
That's exactly what my main point was going to be. They've got to improve that bench. No Marcus Thornton.
Let's not get started on that guy.
Jan Mahinmi is out for another 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And so they're going to need some help there. They can't roll with borderline D-League guys, and McClellan, Achefu, and Satoransky's kind of struggled playing out of position so far as a rookie. So they've got to kind of improve there. Trey Burke has, been okay, but he's never going to be a top rotation guy. And Oubre's kind of been, hit or miss as well. So hopefully they can continue to trend in the right direction and possibly sneak into that eighth spot for the playoffs. Let's see, Matt. I'm going to go back to you because this is one of two Timberwolves questions that we have, but I'm going to start with this one.
Yes.
Since you're a T-Wolves guy, do you think that they try to move Andrew Wiggins for more pieces to help this team that fits basically Thibodeau's system? That comes from Hub Roberts as well.
No, I don't think they're going to move Andrew Wiggins. He's too talented of a guy right now, and he's still very young. The potential is there for him to be an elite defender, which is one of the things they said coming out of Kansas, that he was ready right away to be an elite defender. He hasn't shown that. But like Eddie Johnson said last week, with these young guys, it just takes some time sometimes. The offense usually comes first, then they learn how to play defense. I think you just got to get a couple more veterans. Someone like Luol Deng, I'm not saying that's who you bring in, but a guy like him, teach these young guys that they got to play defense, and I think you roll with it that way. But as far as trading Wiggins, no way. And I don't think Thibodeau would do it either.
Okay, yeah, I think if he can I don't know, he'd have to look at it if you threw Jimmy Butler in that equation.
No, that's different there. If
not
you throw
that
Jimmy
Chicago's
Butler in,
going to do it, but
no, if you throw Jimmy Butler in there, then it may change my mind, but that may be the one guy that Thibodeau would do it for, because we know Tibbs loves Jimmy.
Yeah. Okay. Keith, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat. It would have to be for Jimmy Butler or somebody like that. I would actually, and you guys know I'll come back and eat crow if I have to. The guy I would trade first is Zach LaVine. I just don't know that Zach LaVine is going to be the kind of player that's ever a key cog on a winning championship level team. You know, he's a great scorer, don't get me wrong, fantastic athlete, but I just don't know if I see that as part of him. And I think Wiggins, because he can and is a willing defender, I think he'll get better at that end of the floor. I don't know how much more we can realistically expect from LaVine. I think he could get to be a good team defender, but individually, I'm not sure. So, but mostly, I don't think they're going to start selling guys off. I think Tibbs wants to build around those guys. And the thing is, they don't need to. They're going to get another good pick this year, add another talented player to what they've already got. And they're going to have a bunch of cap space where they'll be able to go out and get a veteran that way if they want to. So, unless it's a true superstar coming their way, I can't see them moving any one of their young pieces.
Yeah, I don't. Just as you said, LaVine would be the only one that I would even consider, possibly moving, because I think he's more of a long-term six-man, kind of in that Jordan Clarkson mold where he can just come off the bench and do a lot of things scoring-wise. We've got two more questions before we kind of wrap up the mailbag. Keith, going to you. Do you think Kemba Walker will actually make the All-Star team this season?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. That guard spot's pretty loaded in the East, but I think he has a really good chance. And I don't want to run through the full roster of guys, but I think he is right in the mix, and I think he'd be very deserving. He has been, I've said it before on this podcast, I didn't think he was going to be anything beyond change of pace bench scorer in the NBA, and I could not have been more wrong. I'm naturally predisposed to dislike UConn players, so it's one. I don't think highly of many of them coming into the NBA, and I was definitely wrong on Kemba. He is outstanding. He's a better point guard than I ever thought he would be. Thought he was going to be a shooting guard in a point guard's body, and he can function as that, which I think is why Nick Batum's a great match for him in the backcourt, because Batum's a good ball handler and passer himself, so he gets to play off the ball a little. But yeah, I think Kemba should be right in the mix, and I think there's a good chance he cracks it this year.
Matt, what do you think, All-Star or not?
Absolutely, I think he should be an All-Star. But if they somehow go through a stretch where they lose 7 out of 10 and they fall out of that out of the top 8, then he might not get it in. Because right now I would have him, over Isaiah Thomas. But if Boston's going to stay, I don't think they're going to fall out of that top 8 anytime soon. But if somehow Charlotte were to fall out, then I could see Isaiah getting the spot over Kemba Walker. But as long as they're in that top 8 come time to pick the teams, Kemba Walker's going to get in. He deserves it. Should have got in last year, too.
Now we're going to have a fight.
Because Isaiah Thomas was fantastic last night. I knew he was about to start.
See that? He single-handedly won him that game on offense.
That's
44
true.
points on 16 field goal attempps.
I wasn't going to stir the pot and throw out Isaiah Thomas as the example. I was going to leave that alone because I knew with Keith being the huge Celtics guy, it was.
Hey, it's my opinion, and I'm sticking with it.
That's all right.
But you know what? Let me say this though: you can't go wrong either way. I can't say if Keith has him over Kemba. Well, Keith, you're wrong. You're an idiot. No, it's not that.
Yeah, no,
he's not wrong.
Honestly, I hope they both make it.
Yeah, that's where I was.
I think the question: how many point guards are they? Because the Wizards get in there now. You're talking John Wall because we know Lowry, Kyrie, they're in.
Yeah, and with shooting guard not being that deep, just skip adding a shooter.
Let Isaiah Thomas be the shooting guard.
A bunch of point guards, and it's an all-star game. They, rather see guys who can handle the ball and shoot, and make stupid shots and that kind of stuff. It just, man. Oh man, you dished my guy.
It wasn't a dish.
That's my guy. I'm gonna have to get my daughter in here. She loves tea. She'll come right after.
She might go toe to toe. She might. Hey, she might be able to go toe to toe with.
I stirred the pot. That's what we try to do here. We try to make we try to make it entertaining.
We were getting along so well too.
All right, so last question, guys, before we wrap this up, and we actually have something kind of cool that kind of got thrown in last minute. It's which combo would you rather build around?
Yes,
Jabari Parker or Giannis Antetokounmpo of the Milwaukee Bucks, or Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Wiggins of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Matt, I'm going to give you this one first.
This was a very tough one. And I was surprised when we talked earlier, Pete, you actually were with me on this one. So I'm sorry, I'm spoiling it for everybody out there. I apologize. But I'm actually slightly leaning towards the freak and Jabari Parker. I think right now, give me Antetokounmpo over Towns because, Towns is kind of up and down, didn't get off to the greatest start this year, hasn't been the guy we thought he was going to be. And if the Bucks win a few more games, Giannis is in the MVP conversation. So give me Giannis there. And right now, I would definitely take Jabari Parker over Andrew Wiggins. I just think he can do more on the basketball court.
Mm-hmm. I'm a huge Jabari Parker fan. Wiggins it's what everybody said. He's inconsistent, as far as on a nightly basis. He'll put up 26 one night and give you 14 the next. And
that was his not coming out of Kansas, his motor.
Yeah, and with Parker, he's borderline all-star. Giannis will be an all-star. So you look at Towns. Yes, he's good, but I actually think he's regressed from last season. Not a lot, but he's regressed a little bit from last season. And I think the biggest takeaway from that is no Kevin Garnett on that team. I think that's made the biggest difference as far as Karl Anthony Towns is concerned. But Keith, going to you.
Yeah, sweep it. I irrationally love Jabari Parker. I like him more than anybody who's never worn a Celtics uniform of any player that's played. I think that guy's fantastic. I think Jabari Parker, depending on how Milwaukee develops and the talent they put around, I think he will contend for and potentially win a scoring title someday. I think he's that good on offense. He's just got the total package, and people still want to hold to, he's a little doughy and he's, kind of chubby and doesn't move that quick. Those people have not watched him take the ball to the basket. What he reminds me, he's amazing going to the hoop. What he reminds me of is the body comp wise is Paul Pierce when he came into the league. Yeah. Pierce was a little chubby, little flabby around the middle, not fat, but just a little thicker than you'd like. And Jabari's actually already worked on it, and he's got that big butt that coaches like. He'll just turn, back you down, score on you there, get that jump shot. So we can stay all night, and I'll love on that.
And he's becoming a much improving 3-point shooter.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially he's knocking him down from the corner now. I put it out on Twitter, and I think, Matt, I think you responded to it. How good would this team be if they had Chris Middleton? Like,
Mhm.
oh man, that's gonna be one of those things that's just a bummer on the season. It was a bummer when it happened, but even worse now. But so I have him really almost a full tier above Andrew Wiggins
Same for me.
right now.
Mhm.
So that really puts it to where you put Giannis against Towns. And for me, Giannis has definitely stepped his game up to a whole new level. He's doing things on the court that 6'11" guys aren't supposed to do. He's got the handle, he's got the passing. He becomes, I can't tell you how many times I've watched the guy rip a rebound down around the free throw line, and it seems like he's at the other free throw line in 2 dribbles, 2 long strides, and he finds a shooter or finishes himself. It's just ridiculous how quick and how smooth he is. And Towns has dropped back a little. Now, Towns is still, don't get me wrong. If you made me rank these 4 guys, I'd probably take Towns just a tick above Giannis for their overall potential moving forward. But it's so close that Parker being so far ahead of Wiggins for me makes it a very easy decision.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, and that's one thing I want to throw out there too, is I don't want to take anything away from Towns saying that he regressed. I just think it's just a little bit under what he did last year. And you can look at, you got a coaching change, roster changes, all that plays a factor. So
and there's pressure on them this year. They were like many like me had them in the playoffs. Yes, some didn't, but there are a lot of people who had this team as a playoff team, and you'd see things change when there's pressure on you, especially with young players.
But let me tag on to that. I think Pete hit the nail on the head. I think Tibbs was counting on having KG there this year. Mm-hmm. And KG would have made a world of difference to being in those guys' ears every single day in practices and in games. He wasn't going to play probably more than 10, 12 minutes a night. He would have been ceremonial starter, probably come out right around that first TV timeout for each half, and that would have been it. But just him being in those guys' ears every night, they'd be a better defensive team than what they are now. Mm-hmm. And I think that probably threw off their planning a little bit and what they were going to build defensively. So that's the biggest disappointment with that team. Obviously, I think we talked about that, is just that they don't defend at all. And, and they've got to get that figured out. And we saw it again, in their most recent game.
And they have the personnel to defend, too. That's the crazy thing.
Yep. No, absolutely.
Well, that's going to wrap us up for the questions portion of our mailbag segment. I think went very well for the first go around. Lots of questions thrown in there. So thank you everyone that took the time out to submit some questions, and we'll do this again in another couple months and hopefully get a lot more questions in there. But before we wrap the show up, finally, we had a little debate last night.
I started it.
And Matt, and then I kind of jumped in there too. Matt basically said that
the best
D'Antoni's Rockets team this year are the best team that he's coached.
Yes,
Keith and I were both on the side of you have to look at the Phoenix Suns teams as being far better. So Matt, I'm going to go to you first. I'm going to let you state your case, and then Keith, I'm going to you next.
My case is actually very simple, but I'm going to start it off with this. This Rockets team in no way is more talented than those Phoenix teams. But that's not what the argument is. That just because you're more talented doesn't make you better. Dirk Nowitzki played on a couple teams that were far more talented than the team that won the championship. So I'm going to throw that out there first. But I think what does it for me is obviously offensively they're not as good. They're still very good to great offensively, this Rockets team. It's the defense that does it for me. They have guys who can go out there and get stops. That Phoenix team really could not get stops. When they needed stops in those playoff games, they just couldn't get them. And that, to me, is why I think this Rockets team, I think they're going to make the conference finals, something those Phoenix teams never did under Mike D'Antoni. It wasn't until they got a couple guys in there who could get defensive stops. Grant Hill was an outstanding defensive player for them when they got to the conference finals. That team before them, you had a young Joe Johnson, wasn't known for his defense. Steve Nash obviously was never known for his defense. Amari Stoudemire, never known as a defender. Who else? Sean Marion was probably the lone guy on that lineup that we looked at as a really, really good defensive player, all NBA defense caliber guy with this Rockets team. Patrick Beverley, lockdown defender. Clint Capella protects that rim, fantastic defensively. Even James Harden is getting out there playing a little defense. Trevor Ariza, while he's fallen off a little bit, it's just because he's older, but he gets out there, he plays defense. Ryan Anderson is even playing a little defense this year, which is kind of surprising. Saw him play a little bit last night. So this team, and off the bench, you can bring in Nene, who can do some things from time to time. He's older now. Montrezl Harrell, energy guy, can do some things for them defensively. Last night you saw it. They lost, but I don't think it was because of defense. It was just the careless turnovers down the stretch. You saw the one they missed. Trevor Ariza comes down, pokes the ball from behind from Kawhi Leonard. It's stuff like that. You didn't see that with those Suns teams.
Right. I think before I go to you, Keith, I think the biggest thing for me is you just touched on it, Matt, is the turnovers. The Suns did not turn the ball over the way that the Rockets turned the ball over. Obviously, having Steve Nash is a big part of that, but just fundamentally on defense, the Suns team, especially in 06-07, were a heck of a lot stronger than the Rockets ever thought of being. Never would call it an elite defensive team, but basically looking at their shooting defense, they ranked in the top 12. So you have to look at that as a whole. You have to kind of just look at just kind of the pieces on that team. If you were to kind of go down the roster, a little bit, with the current Rockets team, you've got some guys that wouldn't even sniff the any of the Mike D'Antoni Phoenix teams. So, not all of them. There are key bench guys, but Keith,
if this Rockets team gets knocked out in the first round, I'll eat crow. But when they make it to the conference finals, something D'Antoni, that Suns team never could do in a much better Western Conference, in my opinion.
Yeah, but they did. They made the conference finals twice with D'Antoni, 2 times in a row. 04-05 and 05-06.
Did they get there in 04-05?
Yeah.
That's when I was in boot camp in the Navy, so
all right, we'll give you that.
I missed a bunch of that time. I know. I missed a bunch of that.
Yeah, so they did, and then there was the next year that they had all that foolishness in that Spurs series where Stoudemire and Boris Diaw both got tossed and suspended, and all that. And that team, that was the best team of the bunch. It's just for me, it's and maybe this Rockets team is doing some different things, but that Suns team fundamentally changed the game. They made, while the Spurs were big on pace and space just a little bit before them, the Spurs were push it when you can. Those Suns teams were run it up the floor every single time you get it, off makes, off misses, off turnovers, off any opportunity you have, get it up the floor. And that 7 seconds or less team was so good. And people want to make it out like they were terrible because they allowed a lot of points, but their defensive ratings were right in the middle of the pack for the league every year. They weren't, bad. So I just, maybe it's my bias because I loved those teams. Those teams helped pull me back into the NBA. That was in a period where I was starting to become a little, disenfranchised with it. Probably had quite a bit to do with the fact that the Celtics weren't very good at that point in time. But they were just so much fun to watch. Steve Nash was, just every night was, every bit. And I know people rip on those MVPs that he won. Was he the most deserving guy and those kind of things? But he was so good, those 2 years and that team. I wish we could go back and, put Stoudemire and Diaw and just, push them back a couple inches off the floor, and make them stay behind the lines and see what would have happened with that team. And then, unfortunately, it all fell apart mostly due to injuries and those kind of things. But, yeah, it's – and I'm with you. I'll eat some crow if this Rockets team does better than I thought they would. They've already done far better than I thought they would. And maybe
let me preface this by saying, and Pete can back me up on this, I am one of the biggest Rocket haters out there. I don't usually have kind words to say about the Rockets. Maybe I'm just caught up in the moment.
I'll say, too, maybe this Rockets team is rewriting things with the way they're bombs away from three, constantly every night and, with all different guys. And I'm really interested to see what happens with Capella out now. But those Suns teams, I'm not making it to say that they were good defensively, but they were not bad like people.
I don't think they were like, but I think this Rockets team has the ability to get stops in key moments. That Suns team, and maybe it's just been a long time, but it just didn't seem like that Suns team was able to get stops when it really counted. But I think this Rockets team can do that. That to me is the big difference.
Yeah,
I could, like I said, I'll eat crow.
Impossible to do, but I think if you could match these guys up with each other, I think Amari Stoudemire would eat them alive.
Exactly.
30 points per game in the series. They wouldn't know what to do with them, and that'd be about it.
But see, the problem, then you go off. Now you're bringing Amari out all the way to defend a guy like Ryan Anderson and stuff like that. I think it would be an interesting series.
They just put him on Capella and let him hang out near the rim.
That's true. Sean Marion would be the one guarding. But who on that team, though, who guards James Harden?
Sean Marion, Raja Bell when they need it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. That's the guy I was leaving off. Raja Bell was the one defender the other defender on that team. I knew I missed one.
So if you had to, I don't know. I can't really necessarily, for me, I can't throw those D'Antoni teams together just because there's, there are similarities, obviously, with the high scoring, with threes and the points. But if you look at the Lakers team in 2012, 2013 that D'Antoni coached,
he did a pretty good job of that.
Yeah, he didn't coach them until 10 games into the season, I think.
6. Well, no, that's right. He got hired 5 games in, and then it wasn't until that's right.
But if you look at it, that team is kind of actually structured a little bit like the Rockets in that they take a lot of threes. The Lakers, I think they were third or fourth in the league. Yeah. One of the top 10 offenses, top 20 in defense, and they played up tempo. Looking at that Lakers team was turnover prone, just like the Rockets team is, strong on the boards like the Rockets team are. But the thing about it is this Rockets team does not defend the shot, the way that the Suns team did. And perfect point, Keith, is you put Sean Marion to lock down James Harden. James Harden's not going to get those, necessary foul calls. Marion's going to be able to body him up a little bit more. And then Raja Bell can come in there and spot him some minutes if needed as well. So, perfect.
Here's the thing also with the Lakers team. They had the cancer that is Dwight Howard.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah. Well, the end of that D'Antoni.
And that really wasn't a D'Antoni roster when you really look at that team. They didn't have the shooters.
Well, that was
shot a lot of threes. That team. But he did a fan because I think the second half of the season, the Lakers had the second best record in the West. Yeah. They got 10 games below 500, I believe, and then they just caught fire. And then unfortunately, Kobe goes down. Shoot, I think they would have made the finals that year if Kobe doesn't go down.
Well, and the other thing too, at the end of D'Antoni's time there was you had Kobe starting to transition to the "I'm going to do whatever the hell I want" phase of his career. And that really sunk things because. It became sad to watch D'Antoni push a team that walked the ball up the floor.
Yeah. But, Kobe was really good that first year D'Antoni was there before he got hurt. He was having one of his higher shooting seasons he had in a while. It was unfortunate that he had to go down with the Achilles because I would have been interested what that Laker team could have done healthy in the playoffs that year.
Yeah,
they were playing great.
Part of why he got hurt, though, is because D'Antoni was
That's true. Yeah. That's true. That's true.
His usage rate was 32 or something like that, right there with what James Harden is now. So
we're going nuts about Harden and Westbrook this year, and Kobe did it when he had 10 years on those guys.
Exactly. So, well, good debate. Yeah, exactly. All right, guys. Well, that's going to wrap us up for that discussion. And closing out the show, I just want to remind everybody to continue to go to iTunes. Subscribe to the Unquestionably Raw channel. You get all the downloads, obviously auto-downloaded. Please, 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 not only leave us a 5-star review, but please leave a written portion in that review. That is a huge, huge help as far as future sponsorship and just people that are casually listening to hop on. We've gotten many 5-star recent reviews and very thankful for everybody that took the time to do that. But please, if you can, leave a written review. Continue to check out the video portion, going to YouTube, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment underneath the video. We try to get to those and answer any questions you leave, or just kind of touch on any of the feedback you're giving as well. And then, like I said at the beginning of the show, 16 Wins a Ring is launching tomorrow, 12 noon Eastern. So look out for that site launch. We're so excited to be a big part of that. I know all the guys, including Keith, on the written side of things, have a bunch of stuff to go up there. So check out all of that content, and we will see you guys on Friday. We're going to kind of do a little Christmas wish list for some of the teams in the NBA. So that should be exciting. We're going to do Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern. So until then, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to the Unquestionably Raw podcast.